Hello everybody and welcome back inside the box for another episode of Gunpla Kitbash with me, Kukamatsu. In this episode, details, decals, and then full assembly of the new Strike Rouge. So, let's jump right in. Okay, well, with the base painting done, we are getting very close to final assembly. There are just a couple of little jobs to do before that. One of them is I have these parts that are piston parts, and they're active piston parts, and actually they're not all active. These ones won't move, but these ones are part of the original Zaku 2 mechanic, and they do move with the foot. And I've tried a lot of things to get the silver part of the piston looking good. I've tried paint, and it just sort of first of all, it doesn't look very good to begin with, and then it scratches potentially as it moves in and out. So what I've started using is this bare metal foil. This is the matte aluminum. You can see I've used it quite a few times before. You basically want to cut a length that is about the diameter of the piece. I'm just going to guess at about there. Just stick it on there. There we go, kind of lined up there. And it's easy as that. And it looks quite nice. And then from there, you just have to make sure it's going to fit in the piston. It looks like it does fit just fine. There we go, looks pretty nice. So I'll go ahead and do that on all of these guys. It's a good idea to use a toothpick to make sure it's burnished to the surface, especially around the seam. So you see what happened there is, and I actually pushed it harder than I should have on purpose to show you what happens. It's quite a tight fit to begin with, and then that adds just a little bit of thickness. So it's important to get it really burnished onto the surface, but also I often tend to drill out the other side of the piston a little bit to avoid that problem. I happen to have a set of small reamers from my animatronics days, but you can do this step with a regular drill bit. I'm just going to open up that space just a little bit, just make sure that I'm going to have enough room for the piston and the foil. And there we go, fitting much better now. Okay, those are done. Well, everything is painted, all the details are done. The next step is actually going to be decals, but to do that, I like to have it assembled. So my favorite part of the build, final assembly. And that means I'll be putting it all together and gluing on any panels that we previously just stuck on with sticky tack, and getting everything to its final state. Okay, well, I have all the sub-assemblies put together. I've got everything glued that needs to be glued, so all these panels and the legs and everything, all the custom stuff is all attached now. The next step in the process is going to be putting a clear coat on to seal all the paint. I'm going to be using Tamiya Clear X22. It's a kind of glossy finish. Okay, and that's done. You can kind of see more of a shiny surface on there now. I gave it 2 good coats. If you've never used water slide decals before, it's pretty straightforward, especially on a kit like this. Gunpla kits tend to have a lot of decals available if you're going the water slide decal route, but they're fairly simple decals, small, and that makes them easy to apply. It's not like a giant decal that has to go over a compound surface that you need to use some kind of decal setting fluid with. These ones I find you don't even really need the decal setting fluid, just use water and it usually looks pretty good. So we'll just start by cutting out the first one. I'm going to go with this one for the pauldron. So I have a small pot of sort of lukewarm water. I'm just going to go ahead and put it in there. I have at the ready a couple of Q-tips and a toothpick. Some people like to wet the surface a little bit before putting a decal on. I don't find it really that necessary. Maybe it's because I have the gloss coat on there, I'm able to move the decal around a little bit before I commit to the spot. But if you're finding it hard to move the decal around to where you want it, then I would suggest just wetting it down a little bit before you put the decal in. Lets it float around a little bit more, gives you a little bit more mobility of the decal. So I think it's ready now. What I normally do is just grab it by the corner with my left hand, and then with my right, I gently push it off with the toothpick. There's a lot of water on there, so I'll just drain off a little bit with this Q-tip just to be able to move it around, and then use the toothpick to push it into place like that. And then starting at the middle, just rolling the Q-tip across towards the outside to push the water out and get it nice and stuck on the surface there. And that's it. I spotted a decal that is actually going to go over this seam line here, but I want it to conform to that seam line, so I will use some decal solution. I have this Microset and Microsol. Microset basically helps it adhere to the surface better, and then Microsol is what softens it and gets it to go into all of those little details. So the way it works is you start with Microset, just dip a Q-tip in there and rub that on the surface a little bit. And you apply the decal as normal. And then with a soft brush, I'll just brush the Microsol over top of the decal. You don't want to move the decal at this point. The decal will quickly become much weaker, so if you try to move it around, you're more likely to break it. And the key here is do not touch it. Again, you don't want to. You're not worried about trying to get rid of all of the extra liquid or anything. You just have to let it sit, do its thing. It'll wrinkle up, and then it will dry out and hopefully go right into that little panel line. That is sitting nicely in the panel line now. You can see that the decals do have a different specular highlight than the rest of the model at this point, but I'll be spraying over top of them with a matte finish, so that's not a concern at this point. So pretty easy process. Only hard thing about it is that there are lots to do, and it takes a while. Okay, we have all the decals applied, and now I just want to seal them in so they don't scratch off. So I'm going to use this Tamiya XF86 flat clear, and I'll just give a couple of coats over the whole thing. But this is where I'm going to avoid spraying the metal parts that I sprayed previously with the glossy one. I just want to try and concentrate on the panels themselves. Simply gets a little bit of overspray onto the metal bits, but generally speaking, I want to keep it glossy. All right, time to finally put this thing together and see how it looks. Oh, I do love that part. Finally, it's all together for the first time. I'd say it's looking pretty good. What do you think? And that brings us to the end of the episode. It is assembled, but we're not done yet. In the next episode, we'll be doing some weathering. So, if you enjoyed the video, I'd appreciate it if you give me a like down below. Check out the playlist for previous videos. Subscribe if you want to follow along, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.